Ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce somebody whom I've known for the last 25 years, William Wandel. Bill, as I call him. Bill is okay, right, Bill?
That's Bill is what everyone calls me, and thank you for inviting me here and allowing me to talk about your music. I had such a great time working with you, and there's so much to talk about from a composer standpoint and an arranger standpoint, things that attracted me to the music.
And it's good to have you here because you certainly lent your talent to us with the Armenian Trilogy. Maybe you can explain to our audience a couple of terminologies that are used relative to composition. You're a composer, you could be an arranger, you could be an orchestrator, you are a soloist on piano and various other instruments.
Well, let's talk about orchestration because this is something that's kind of unique. The composer generally will have the composition as a melody and chord changes and arrangement. You know, it's just an overall vibe of it. The orchestrator speaks the language that the players are gonna read.
Right.
So, I mean, really it's the shortest distance to the reality of getting it performed.
Gotcha.
is going through an orchestrator.
Right.
And sometimes it's just to bounce ideas off, you know. It's another person who isn't the composer who can say, well, what if we did this with tremolo strings instead of legato strings? As an orchestrator, I might suggest something like that, or I might say, well, you're giving this to violin, well, what if we gave this to the oboe?
Why would you make that decision?
I might hear it that way, and I might suggest
so it's a personal taste.
Or I might say, well, we've already heard the violin, let's give the woodwinds a chance to speak here. We've got all these players, we've got 100 players, let's give them all something cool to do. And that's one thing as an orchestrator that I've learned is that you got to give every player something great to play. And all these little technical aspects that a composer generally doesn't think of, it's the orchestrator's job to make sure it's performed well. And this is just the language of the player. This is what they're used to getting in their parts. Here's the amazing thing about this piece of music that you wrote for piano and violin, the original. You had this amazingly complex piece of music, and usually as an orchestrator, I would see the piano and the violin part as music there. Well, the first step was transcribing the performance note for note. Transcription is just going through and listening and figuring out how to bar it, you know, put the bars and phrasing so it's easier to read for someone else.
Right.
So you already had a performance for two particular players, and then for them to recreate that performance, the only way they could do that is to read the music again. So we had to do a transcription. Right. And first you had hired me to do a transcription. You said, like, Bill, just write this out for me.
Well, Bill Wandel, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I appreciate your time of coming in and explaining all this, how we've been able to work together, and your background is pretty impressive.
Oh, thank you.
Yep.
Yours too.
Yep, thank you.